Surprise! The book bitch lied. We're not going to be talking about the invasion today. We're going to be talking about the Andalite Chronicles. Which, fun fact, this is my second original copy. And I say the second original copy because I know for a fact that my first original copy got destroyed when one of the pipes in my wall burst when I was probably like 7 or 8, maybe 9 years old. And this just happened to have been either on the bottom shelf of my bookshelf, which was right near the access panel where the pipes were, or it had been left on the floor because I had a beanbag chair in that vicinity, and that's where I liked to read. So this was the replacement copy, which I don't know how well you can tell, but there's definitely been some damage to this copy as well. There's my old second original copy, and it even has proof that this is an ancient effing book. It's my dead name, and it shows that this was my favorite book at one point in time. Yeah, so we're going to talk about Andalite Chronicles first, because while it doesn't fall into the continuity of the series as far as when it was written and released until a little bit later, it does mostly take place before the events of the series, and like a good solid chunk of it happens right before and leads into the invasion, which will be, promise, this time, Scout's honor. The next video will actually be on the invasion. But for now, we're going to talk about Andalite Chronicles, which was most definitely one of the first books to really get me into reading. And I know I've said that just about this series in general, and I'm going to say that about a couple more books in the series. But this one was, god damn it, there it goes. Turn the fucking camera on and I start yawning every fucking time. Every fucking time. But I can remember reading this book over and over and over, which wasn't much of a shocker. If I had a book that I enjoyed back in that time, and that time being before I graduated high school, I would reread and reread and reread and reread that same book probably 30, 40 times. More if I could, swing it. But usually if my mom saw me with the same book for more than a week, she would go and physically either drag me to the library, or she would go to Walmart or Kmart or Target or one of the bookstores in the mall, and she would come home with just like a small stack of books for me and be like, listen, you've been rereading that same book. I love that you're reading. Read something the fuck else. But for some reason, she didn't really do that with this book. And I'm glad for that, because I don't think I would really be rereading this series if it wasn't for the fact that certain scenes in this book stand out and have stood out in my brain as at such like fever dream levels of detail in my memory for as long as they have. Like, I was almost like, I had to have been at least halfway through reading this damn thing. But okay, by the way, spoilers. Just blanket spoiler warning for the entire fucking series, but I'm gonna try to do a spoiler warning towards the beginning of every episode. Spoilers, pretty much for the rest of the video. If you want a spoiler-free reaction or review, I enjoy the book, please read the book. Alright, but anyway, spoilers happening in 3, 2, 1. Spoilers. For the longest time, one of my, main memories of the entirety of the series was of one of the Andalites driving some manner of convertible around a weird, desolate planet and turning on the radio and having the Rolling Stones blare at them and them deciding nope and turning the radio right back off. And I got to probably about halfway through reading this damn thing, and I was starting to wonder if it was in a different Chronicles book or if I had just like fever dreamed that shit into existence, because about the same time that this was a favorite book of mine, I ended up getting viral meningitis. And there was a good solid couple of weeks there that I either read things and my brain decided to twist it into something different, or I had a book on my reading list and my brain decided to just give me some weird, wild, like, plot synopsis, and I never actually read the book. Yeah, I don't recommend getting viral meningitis when you're also just, reading wild science fiction fantasy. Alright, so I'm just gonna I wrote out, we're probably gonna see a lot of this yellow notebook until I run out of pages in the yellow notebook, and then you'll see whatever the fuck color my next notebook will be. Excuse me. But I wrote out a lot of my thoughts, feelings, and just little plot synopsises. Synopses? Synopsises. I like that better. Anyway, I wrote that stuff out in here to try to remember what I want to write or what I want to say and what the books are about, because honestly, I don't know if you can see the stack next to me, but I've got book 1, book 2, books 3 and 4, and book 5 to review. I'm through all of those books so far, and I'm just now sitting down to review the first book on my pile and in my list. So I'm just gonna reread, or read through this, and yeah, there you go. If you want something more in depth where they're talking about like the mechanics of shit and shit, I know there's podcasts or whatever, but you chose my video, and my video is gonna be me reading from my book and probably going on tangents, because that is what I do. And so here we go. Alright. Aloran always kind of fascinated me as a character, and now having grown up and seen how the real world works, I sympathize with him a lot more than I did growing up. Still not cool with the war crimes, but I can sympathize. Anyway, spoilers, duh, the series is over 20 years old, after all. So, the Andalite Chronicles is written as the final log of War Prince Elfangor Cyrenial Shamtol, older brother of Animorph accidentally Esgaroth Isthal. I'm amazed that I actually managed to say either of those without stuttering. That's not written in here. That's just me being proud of myself. Number 1, the invasion takes, purely, I don't know, back up here. I chose to review this one before number 1, the invasion, purely because the entire story takes place before the events of book 1, and it leads right into book 1. Plus, I mean, as witnessed in the back of this book, it's my favorite Animorphs story. We open with Arith Ilfangor and his frenemy, Erbron, aboard the Andalite dome ship, or an Andalite dome ship. They're summoned by the captain, who tells them they're being sent on a mission with War Prince Aloran, a disgraced military figure who unleashed a quantum virus on the Hork-Bajir homeworld. Which, just side note, I used to read Hork-Bajir as Hork-Bajar. Like, I don't know why my brain read that I as an A. Like, I could spell it correctly if I was writing a fanfic, which I'm so glad that my notebooks from that time don't exist anymore. They would be so cringe. I could write it properly, I could spell it properly, but it was Hork Bajar, and I don't remember. I wish I could remember how I pronounced Andalite in my brain, because it was not Andalite. And also, Tobias was always Tobus. So, yeah, my mom corrected me on that when I was like 13 years old. Thanks, Mom. Anyway. The mission they're being sent on winds up being far from the simple recon-type mission they think it'll be when it's discovered that the Skritna ship that they're being sent to investigate turns out to have 2 humans on board. And then they discover that the other Skritna ship has the Time Matrix, a near mythical weapon of immense power aboard. So they give chase to the Taxon homeworld, where the ship meets the fan. The trio of Andalites morph Taxons, gigantic centipede-like aliens, and Elfangor loses the other 2 near immediately in a sudden feeding frenzy, which ultimately lands him captured by the Yeerks, who are very interested in the obviously not a real Taxon, who didn't jump in to help devour his felled Taxon. He manages to escape, only to find one of the humans has decided to betray both the Andalites and their own species to the Yeerks, which makes things that much more dire. Elfangor I'm gonna keep saying his name weird, and y'all are just gonna have to make your peace with that, because I've made my peace with that, even though I'm going to cringe every time it comes out of my mouth. Elfangor manages to find and conspire with Arbron, who's now stuck in Taxon morph, and they manage to launch a surprise attack on the spaceport, which leads Elfangor, Aloran, and the humans to freedom. Except there's Yeerks in the humans' heads, one of which ends up being the first Yeerk to take control of an Andalite. There ends up being a struggle after the battle lands them drifting closer and closer to certain death in a black hole, and the 2 Andalites and one of the humans activate the Time Matrix, sending them into a pretty well-written depiction of hell, even if that's not exactly what it's meant to be. There's another struggle, and Elfangor trusts the human Lauren to use the Time Matrix to get them the fuck out of the very wrong created universe. He morphs a human and lives 3 years on Earth, burying Lauren and knocking her up before being forced away by an Ellimist. Now, what's an Ellimist? At this point, I don't fucking remember. All I remember is that they're these weird fucking, basically take, Norse mythology Loki and add in some Kokopelli, and you're probably still not quite on the level of trickster spirit that these stupid fuckers are. But don't worry, they come up way later in the series. There's a whole ass book I have not actually read that's on my bookshelf right now, which I don't think you can see, but it's back that way. It's all about them fuckers, supposedly. So, you'll find out the same time I find out. Unless you're watching this as an Animorphs fan who knows a lot more than I do. In which case, shut the fuck up, I'll find out eventually. Now, that was basically an excessively dumbed down version, not including my favorite part, which is Elfangor driving a bright yellow Mustang across the Taxon homeworld while drinking Dr. Pepper with his hoof and being confused and horrified by the Rolling Stones on the radio. That scene stayed so perfectly in my brain for the last 20 years that it almost felt like a fever dream until I reread it. They jam a lot of info into this one book, which was originally released to school book clubs in 3 parts, which is, I think, my only real issue with this book, because it led to a lot of recap repetition across an already fairly short page span. Because seriously, as 3 full books or whatever, it's only 326 pages. That's only slightly longer than A Fear Street Super Chiller, and it's got 3 books in it. the serialized release of one big book like that really... Yeah, I really kind of wish I could have read it as the 3 books instead of the one singular book. And I feel like at one point I may have actually had, like, parts of the individual books. But I don't remember for sure. Yeah, there's so much good between the covers of this book that, you know, it's forgivable to have a bit too much exposition. We also get confirmation of Tobias's parentage, including probable reason why his mom abandoned him, losing your love of your life and all of the memories of him, but having a baby to show for it would drive many quite mad. Arguably, this book is the first real book I ever read that gave a realistic idea of how conflicted one can really be and how war can make even the biggest conscientious objector into a fighter, with or against his will, and how not black and white things can be in war, and in peacetime too. It also quite explicitly lays out the moral ground of killing defenseless innocents is wrong, even when they're an enemy race. And how that soldier you idolized from war gone by is probably a war criminal. More than likely. And history won't paint him as such, despite your personal feelings on the matter. Is that a good place to start reading if you've never read Animorphs? Is it? I wouldn't say so. There's too many spoilers and parts that just won't make sense if you haven't read at least the first few Animorphs books. As I've stated, I only made this my first review because it mostly takes place before the invasion. And it's my favorite. It's my guilty pleasure book. I've read it a few times. Not anytime recently, up until very recently. But after I got sniped over to the series that shall not be named, I reread this one, probably 6-7 times still, right on up till graduation. Cat hair in my nose. Ugh. So I had to start with this one. And considering I still have one of my original copies, and I mean, just look at this freaking page art. But is this a good representation of the series as a whole? I'd say so. In fact, I wrote, is it a good representation of the series as a whole? Fuck yes. And you know what? I agree, past book bitch. The Andalite Chronicles was my most read book out of the series. I read it at least 10 times a year until I got sidetracked by Turf Potter. It definitely helped shape my morals, as evidenced by how hard I go for civil rights, Palestinian freedom, Kongan freedom, basically any oppressed people. Yeah. Andalite Chronicles. If you've read at least part of the Animorphs series, or you know for a fact you're not going to read the entirety of the Animorphs series, and you have a basic grasp of concepts in the Animorphs series, I would say read it. If you plan to read the entire series, or you're up to it, like in publication date continuity, I'd say read it. If you can find copies of the original book club releases, send me them. No, I'd say read those because, yeah, they're smaller and I think they have the same, like, these two and this for book covers. But, yeah, I think that they would actually read a little bit better and easier than this. Also, just another side note, this was one of the bigger special books. It was $5 fucking back when it was first fucking published. This was $5 damn. You'd be hard pressed to find a book this size for less than $15 now. It's amazing what they could do back in 1997. What they can't do now. Yeah. Andalite Chronicles. You get to see weird alien blue deer guy, centaur motherfucker, fall in love with... She's described as basically like a teenager of roughly the same age as the Animorphs at the beginning of the series, at the beginning of the book, but then she's very quickly aged up to about 18, so I'm not sure how I feel about that, but... Oh, and the other human that we get to see the majority of in this book is Chapman, the fucking assistant principal from the regular books. So that's fun. He's meant to be a slightly older teenager, I think, and he's the one that dooms humanity to the Yeerks. So thanks, Chapman. Thanks. All right. If you liked this video and you want to see more and you don't want to wait, you can scurry on over to my Patreon, where every video that I currently have filmed is currently up, and you can see them right away. You don't have to wait. I am trying to keep at least 5 videos between what's currently released and what is like filmed and up on the Patreon. Currently, it's not like that because, I mean, I'm in the middle of filming this and I have all of these to cover. But very soon the Patreon will catch up and it will have at least 5 more videos than what is publicly available on the YouTube channel. You can find the Patreon link in the description or by going to the Patreon, or not the Patreon, patreon.com/thebookbitch. Otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much it, y'all. I will see you in the next video, which for most of you will be in about a week, but for Patreon users will be in about an hour. And for people binging this series 10 years from now, it'll be as soon as the autoplay loads your video up. Yeah. Thanks for watching. See you guys later. Bye.